So I just thought I'd do a quick video about Brothers, which is out today. So the song's looking back to the time when my brother was in a pretty bad car accident that left him in a coma for, I don't know how long actually, a week, 2 weeks. And it was pretty touch and go as to whether he'd make it. So the first verse is kind of about the moment that I first found out that he was in a bit of strife. So I'll never forget, it was pretty horrific. It was a Sunday morning. I was getting ready to go play guitar at church, and I get this phone call from Mum, and I've never heard so much grief or despair in someone's voice. I hope I never do again. So she could barely understand what she was saying, but she was clearly very upset. So I just, your world just stops at that point. Nothing else matters. So I ripped round to Mum and Dad's. But it was a pretty weird experience, because during those moments, I think your body goes into like a fight mode, and you're ready for action. You want to do something, but there's not actually anything you can do. So we were there because Ben, the accident was in Port Hedland, and so he was getting flown down by the Royal Flying Doctors, and we had pretty limited information at that point. We knew it wasn't good. We knew he was in a lot of trouble. So all we could do was sit there and wait. So I just remember we sat around in a circle, not knowing what to say really, just all praying. And me being an optimist, I was just thinking, well, everyone always talks everything up. I bet it's not that bad. But it was. So, when the time came closer to when he was due to arrive at the hospital, we all went down there, and I think I was parking the car when Ben actually arrived, and I think the others saw him arrive not out of the plane, but out of the ambulance, getting wheeled in. And yeah, I think that really hit home to everyone just how bad this situation was. He was a complete mess. And as I was parking that car, and I'm sure there was nothing in it, but I think it must have been the paramedic or someone, gave his wife his wedding ring. And I'm sure it was just, because his hands were too swollen or whatever, but I think we all took that as a bit of a symbol that we've lost him. It's over. He's gone. So I remember that being just a real moment where it really hit home for everyone. So I mentioned that in the song, see your wife clutching your ring. Second verse, what happens in there? Oh yeah, so in the second verse, there's a line, I played you your songs. So his wife and I, as we were trying to help him wake up. Not sure that anyone can help anyone wake up, but it makes us feel better anyway. So we were playing him songs on the phone, just on his pillow. And yeah, I remember thinking, oh, he loves Rage Against the Machine, I'll play him that. And Beth's like, no, you'll make him angry. So we tried to pick something more mellow. And so that second verse is also thinking back to when, we spent, hours and hours there obviously, but there was one night in particular where I didn't go home. I kind of stayed with him all through the night. And that was when he was starting to wake up. And in my mind, I don't know what I thought would happen. I thought, as he woke up, it would just be ping, he's awake and everything's fine. But it was much more gradual than that. So he'd kind of wake up for a bit and just thrash around like a bull. And because he was restrained, like he was just going nuts when he woke up. He really was like a bull. So I just didn't want to leave him like that. So I stayed with him all through the night. Just praying with him next to him, trying to comfort him when he woke up. Yeah, just because it was pretty distressing to see him as he was waking up. If you know my brother, if you restrain him on the best of days, it's not going to go well for you, let alone when he's got brain damage. So I was actually really glad I did stay that night. It certainly wasn't a restful night. He was going nuts. But yeah, so in these times, like I remember thinking, I hope we all remember just what's happening, because we spent hours and hours and days and weeks in the hospital, and you observe a lot during that time. And one of the things I was interested to watch is just people's reactions who came to visit him and the words they said. And I remember thinking, like, I hope they remember this, because this stuff is real. When all the nonsense of life is stripped away and kind of everything's pared back to just life and death, you're just left with real people and relationships. And it's real, but often that stuff doesn't get said normally. It takes a crisis like this, it takes a tragic event, often for people to realize the things that are important. So I remember sitting there thinking, wow, we're actually really getting to see what people are made of. And predominantly it was just, this outpouring of love for Ben. He's a popular guy. Just people from years ago were coming through. All of these people who loved him and, were there with us. So dad was there, like, reading him verses from the Bible in true Bartley fashion. And obviously mum was there just holding him, and sister's there crying. So all this is in that last bridge. And then again, I mentioned that image of his wife clutching his ring. That was a big one for me. That was pretty that would go well in a movie, that one. And next door, so a bit of artistic license in that bridge at the end. I think it says, "Hear your kids playing." He only had one child at the time, but his wife was pregnant with the second, I think. But my kids were there, so we could actually, in the intensive care ward, there was like a room next door that we were waiting in. We could hear the kids playing, and it just made it, it just made it so much worse. Knowing, like, if he doesn't live, there's this family next door with these kids who are totally dependent on him. It just made it all a lot more serious. And it's a weird situation being in an intensive care ward. So I think there were, I didn't count how many people there were, but I think in the course of 1 week, 3 people around him died. So they just wheeled them out, and you come back the next day and they're gone. And you ask the nurse, like, oh yeah, they didn't make it through the night. So everyone around him is dying. It was just this crazy time. So, and also, like, as he's waking up, I think in my mind at least, you're working towards him waking up. That's the big thing for a long time, like, just wake up. But you don't actually think about what it's going to be like when he wakes up. And the nurses have said, like, it's pretty likely he's going to have very significant brain damage. No one knows what he's going to be like, if he'll have to, no one knew anything. And so I think in many ways, well, probably in every way, it was much harder when he actually woke up, dealing with everything that happened. And looking back, there are some funny stories from that. Like, I could tell you a lot. I'll just tell you one. So as he came to, he wanted to get out. Like, as I said before, you don't keep my brother contained for long. So he wanted to get out pretty much as soon as he could. And he'd just come out of his coma. He was still, like, needed total bed rest. He wasn't in a good way at all. But I thought, okay, I'll take him out on the wheelchair, get some air. It'll be fine. We restrained him. He was strapped in. Anyway, when we got out the front, he just decides, I reckon he probably planned the whole thing. He ripped off his restraints, chucked him over this hedge, and just bolted out this wheelchair. And I remember I must have looked like such a knob, because he was in trouble. Like, his brain, there was still pressure building up on his brain. Like, he needed to rest. So I'm like, what do I do? Obviously he's not coming back when I'm telling him to. So I thought, I've got to stop him. So I just, kind of ran him down and tackled him, and he didn't want to go easy. So I remember thinking, I must look like such a knob. I'm out the front of the hospital wrestling this guy in a wheelchair. He's in a hospital gown. He's clearly in a bad way, this guy in a wheelchair, and I'm pinning him to the ground, and he's still thrashing about. I was lucky he had been in a coma for 2 weeks, because he's a big lad. I would never normally be able to pin him down, so I enjoyed that one while it lasted. But yeah, man, I wish I had some video footage of that. Fighting a man in a wheelchair outside of a hospital. What a great look. So anyway, that's a little bit about brothers. I have arrived at my destination, so I'm going to stop talking. Hope you enjoy the track, and Ben, we're glad you're still alive.